It has been a week of pretty good news, actually, as the news came overnight, not last night, but the night before, that a peace deal had finally been signed in Israel, between Israel and Hamas. Actually, it was signed in Egypt. Fascinating times. I've been talking a lot recently about how Trump has actually put this together step by step. And I want to break some of that down for you because I kind of want you guys to understand how complex this was, how convoluted it was, how many different pieces on the chessboard needed to be moved around to realise this. And actually, for that reason, I'm relatively hopeful that it will be seen through, that it could, at least for the time being, endure. Will it bring an everlasting peace? Well, you know, it's hard to say really, but I'd imagine not, because that would require a significant proportion of people in Gaza to suddenly have a complete Damascene conversion regarding their views of Israel and the existence of Israel. So I wouldn't count our chickens before they are hatched, but let us cautiously celebrate the magnificence of Trump's art of the deal, shall we? And like I was just saying to Mike Graham, I was really looking forward to watching the cognitive dissonance, right, of some people on the left, all that genocide, ceasefire now, and then Trump's a fascist, and watching Trump actually be the one to make the ceasefire happen. But I actually have not really seen much fallout. They've all just gone relatively quiet. Long may that last. If that was an everlasting peace, we'd all be grateful, but sadly it's probably not going to be, because those rabid pro-Palestine lots want to continue marching because they've got nothing better to do with their lives. They want to continue marching until, well, I don't know. Perhaps they should just get a treadmill, right? Or take up some hiking, okay? Or, you know, join a marching band. I don't know. Go into the army. They like marching around the place. Stop marching on the streets asking for something, which is just pointless now. We've ridiculously already recognised the state of Palestine, as has France and Australia and Canada. There's now a peace agreement. There's going to be an international peacekeeping force. I mean, what do you want now? Or do you just want to march in celebration of anti-Semitism? Because a lot of those people on those marches are just outright Jew haters and radicals and extremists. Despite there being a few peaceniks among them, there's a dark underbelly of some pretty unpleasant people. Well, the big question, I think, today was, is Trump going to win the Nobel Peace Prize? Of course he wasn't. They've announced it now. But of course he wasn't going to. In what mad parallel world would the Nobel Peace Prize Committee go, yeah, Donald Trump, that's a great idea? I mean, to be fair to them, they had finished their deliberations into who should win it on Monday before the peace agreement was signed, so they couldn't call that into question. But even if he had signed it, I'm sorry, when you look at the past people who have won that, it's no longer the who's who of brilliant peaceniks. I remember when they gave it to Barack Obama. Do you remember when they just randomly gave the Nobel Peace Prize to Barack Obama and he hadn't done anything? He was like the DEI Nobel Peace Prize winner, wasn't he? It's like, oh, black president, he better get the Nobel Peace Prize for having a skin colour. It was just, I was like, what's he actually done? Where is the great peace that he's negotiated, the wars that he's ended? He's just turned up. That's all he's done. He's existed, as is the case with a lot of these people now. Ironically, of course, Alfred Nobel himself was the inventor of dynamite, right? He was actually the guy who invented explosives. So make that make sense. But they have now announced who is the winner. She sounds like a coffee machine. María Corina Machado. I hadn't heard of her until this moment in time, but apparently she's a Venezuelan politician. And the Norwegian Nobel Committee has just announced that in Oslo. And she won for her tireless work promoting democratic rights for the people of Venezuela and for her struggle to achieve a just and peaceful transition from dictatorship to democracy. Jorgen Vatne-Widnes, the committee's chair, if that's how you say it. I'm sorry, Jorgen, if that isn't. Lauds her as a woman who keeps the flame of democracy burning amidst a growing darkness. Well, there you go. I'd never heard of you. But I'm sure you're a wonderful person, Maria, and congratulations. Let's speak now to the wonderful James Heale, Deputy Political Editor of The Spectator. James, let's talk about María Corina Machado. Is she a brand new figure in your life, or have you got anything to say about the brilliant work that she has done, apparently keeping the flame of democracy burning?
I'm afraid I haven't got much to add, but I'll say 3 cheers for democracy and good luck to her keeping on going.
There you go, Maria. Good luck to you. Apparently she was beaten in open primary. She was the opposition candidate, wanted to be the opposition candidate to Nicolas Maduro, but didn't get it. So there you are. That's all I've managed to read so far, but I'm sure I will find out how she's been keeping that flame of democracy burning in due course. Now, talking about flames of democracy burning, or perhaps flames of hope burning, let's talk about the Trump peace deal. What I want to ask you first, actually, I was listening to Yvette Cooper this morning being challenged on the Today programme. I still self-flagellate in that manner every morning. And Nick Robinson actually asked a pretty interesting question, saying, well, you know, what were you thinking of, recognising the state of Palestine during all of this? And she basically sort of made out that actually, oh, this was all deliberate. She didn't quite say this, but I got that she was intimating that this was all deliberate. It was an important part of it, that countries like the UK were playing bad cop, so to speak, in order to eventually get Israel to sign a peace agreement. Do you think that's a justified opinion, or was it more that this government are too afraid of certain people within society and wants to appease them?
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, I spoke to people in the diplomatic world at the time of Palestinian state recognition who said that this is a card that has been in the British arsenal for generations, you know, and successive Labour and Conservative foreign secretaries haven't recognised Palestine because they always wanted to use it as a carrot to lure the people running it, now obviously Hamas, to effectively become a much more pro-democracy, pro-peace force. And so there was a great deal of concern from some certain quarters in the diplomatic and foreign office world about whether this really was the right time. Obviously now Yvette Cooper can come out and go, aha, you know, after the fact, and say this played some role. But I would say two things. First of all, it is clearly nonsensical to pretend that Labour Party internal pressures had nothing to do with this decision, and the idea it was all sort of great strategic politics is a nonsense. And you can see that by the fact that, of course, in July, you know, many Labour backbenchers signed an open letter calling on the government to do this, and clearly the government has been influenced by domestic political pressure throughout it. And the second thing to note, of course, is the question about how much has the British really had an influence over the Netanyahu government, particularly since the Starmer government came in last July. And I think it's not huge. So I would say I think much of the running has been made on this by the United States. Obviously, I haven't been privy to all those conversations, but I do think Yvette Cooper is trying to spin a pretty bad story in the best way possible.
Oh, well, that's very unlike the Labour government, isn't it? My view is actually that the beginnings of getting to where we are today actually happened in Trump's first term, which is strange because obviously that foretells or foreshadows October the 7th. But it was when Trump decided to pull out of the JCPOA, when he decided to assassinate the right-hand man of the Ayatollah on Iraqi soil, that he basically said to Iran, we're not messing anymore, we're not going to put up with you and all of your antics. And then what happened, of course, was a period of instability under Joe Biden, the zombie presidency, where all of that work was undone. They started negotiating, trading, talking to Iran again, which I think emboldened Iran, enabled Iran to run about trying to make a nuclear weapon, giving missiles and funding their proxies, which then enabled October the 7th. But it was Trump's first term of actually standing up to Iran and then coming out with a bunker buster bombs. I love that. Bombing their subterranean nuclear uranium enrichment facilities that started to basically weaken the entire network that is behind Hamas. And I think that people need to understand, actually, that this has been a long time in coming. Do you think that's a fair analysis?
I think there's a lot of truth in that analysis. I think that certainly he showed a willingness to embrace both, to borrow from Churchill, jaw, and war. And also from another American president, of course, Richard Nixon, the madman theory, the idea he is so unpredictable that he is a willingness to embrace how shall we say, unconventional, unorthodox means. So I do think there is a certain degree of continuity, because obviously there's so much difference between the first and the second term of Trump. But the first term, you're right, he had that real determination to take out Iran. Always Iran has been a kind of driver, a motivation of the Trump administration and Trump politics. So I do think there's a lot in that. And, you know, you would have to say, look at the faces of the Israelis and Palestinians when that news of a temporary ceasefire was announced, and the joy on both of those. I mean, if that had been Alex, you know, the likes of Obama or any other.
They'll be going wild for it today, wouldn't they?
Absolutely. You can imagine what the liberal press would be saying. You know, they'd be saying great peacemaker. And actually, you have to look, sometimes put aside the rhetoric and look at the results.
Yeah.
Not just intentions, look at the results. And actually, you know, I think there's much to commend Trump at this stage, albeit with all the usual caveats.
I mean, what's fascinating as well is if you remember back to the start of this second presidency, the very first state visit that Trump did was over to Saudi Arabia. And how important has that been? Because when I talk about the sort of four-dimensional geopolitical chess that the likes of Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner and Donald Trump has played, and you know, great credit as well to those other two aforementioned men, is they have managed to shore up support from the entire Gulf region, essentially, and creating a greater schism in the Gulf between the Sunni states and the Shia states, the ostracization of Iran, where we're now in a situation, because Trump said, hey, you know, you back my plan, and what you get is a really tasty slice of real estate of Gaza on the Med. I'm going to build Trump Tower over here, but you get to have a port and this and that, and you can all race to develop it, and there's going to be a sort of tariff-free zone where people are going to, you know, make a huge booming economy. And so the likes of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia and Jordan are like, wow, that sounds like a good idea. That's really enticing, which now means, of course, as part of the 20-point program, he was able to turn around and say to Hamas, look, Israel's not going to be part of the entity that governs you in the future or helps this transition period before you become a democratic state. It's going to be your Muslim neighbours doing that. And I think that, you know, many of these pieces, when you look back to what he has done over the course of time, I mean, people thought he was mad when he was talking about making Gaza on the Med. The same people who thought he was mad are going to be the ones doing their pouty lipstick in their bums out selfies in the balcony of their flash hotel.
I mean, what a vision for the future of the Middle East. You said it so well, Alex. You know, I would say, yeah, I mean, I think that, look, that point about regional partners has been really an astute one. And I think that that's something where they've been able to understand and sell a vision of what a kind of post-October 7th, post-conflict Israel and Palestine could look like, and Gaza, etc. That's something that they've worked really well with the Saudis on, and that's, as you say, Alex, been a priority from day one, both of the last administration and this one. And I think that the Saudis recognise that Trump was a man with whom they could do business. And I think that they're hoping that this is going to be a lasting deal. So how the region has played out has been really interesting, because obviously Israel has taken out a number of hostile threats around the country, and obviously America has done their best to keep everyone on side as well. So I think that even among the British, who obviously traditionally have had very strong allies, some of the ones I've spoken to have been surprised at how well actually a lot of the Trump diplomacy, which might seem a little coarse at times or brash, has actually played out quite well at the current stage, recording this in October 2025.
I really don't think any other American president could have achieved this. And I think it is because Trump is creative when it comes to the art of the deal, because he negotiates, because he's very direct, because he doesn't suffer fools. I think a lot of American presidents previously have been quite weak when it comes to how to handle the Middle East, particularly the Democrats, particularly the likes of Joe Biden. And I actually think that Trump has played an absolute blinder in all of this. I want to talk about Qatar now, because that's a very interesting nation. The left wing love giving flack to Qatar. They like to portray Qatar as a terrible state. Other people like to say, oh, well, you know, it housed Hamas, isn't it evil? My understanding is actually the CIA for a long time were the ones who said to Qatar, please can you have Qatar in Doha? We've got a US Air Force base in the country. We can keep eyes on as to what they're doing. And actually it makes sure that there is constantly an interlocutor there. And so I think in many respects we should also commend Qatar for their role in all of this as the go-between.
Yeah, I think that there's been lots of reports on this, talking about Qatar's role as a middleman, as you say, in sort of encouraging those back channels, because I think that's been something that's been quite important throughout all this to notice, that even as much as sort of Hamas and the IDF have been going hammer and tongs at each other, there has been these important roles. So I think that the Qataris is something that a lot of Americans would pay tribute to in terms of their role in all of this.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. In this country, I remember when we all went tonto during the Football World Cup because, you know, I don't know, Peter Tatchell had strapped himself to a roundabout in the middle of Doha or something. And it's like, what? You don't go mad about the fact that most countries in the world of a Muslim persuasion outlaw homosexuality. It was a very strange, specifically targeted campaign. Now, before I let you go, let us talk about Labour's one in, one out boat scheme. I mean... we knew it was going to be ridiculous. We knew it's not a deterrent. What we found out is that 26 people have been sent back. 10,000 have come in. Yay! It's really working out, isn't it, James?
Yeah, I mean, this is very much the sort of reality of Labour's plans hitting their sort of preconditioned ideas. So they love putting out these videos talking about how the Home Office is sending people back. They love these sort of hard-hitting clips of people returning. The point is, Alex, it reminds me of when the Scottish FA tried to stop professionalism in football in the 1860s, and they said it would be like trying to hold back the torrent of the Niagara Falls with a chair. And effectively, they've been unable to stop this kind of great stream of people across the channel because fundamentally the incentives and system are such that it's much more fundamental than any of this kind of one-in, one-out deal would do. That obviously was intended to be a sort of time-limited, temporary and quite limited sort of arrangement. And clearly the French will never have as much of an incentive to stop people coming here as we will to return them. So it doesn't really surprise me that this much-vaunted scheme, which took a lot of time and effort, is actually not where Labour are going to be achieving the massive returns that they need if they are going to be serious about stopping the boats and getting that hotel bill down by 2029.
But also, how is it supposed to be a deterrent when no one knew that these 26 people were being sent back? There wasn't exactly videos of them, you know, being led to aircraft and handcuffed to the backseat of an aeroplane and dunked back wherever they're supposed to be going to. Oh, make it make sense. James, thank you ever so much. James Heale, ladies and gentlemen.